Hello and welcome. Today I am very excited to bring you a video that is a bit of a departure from my normal format. If you've ever joined me for any of my live streams where I've done some retro gaming, you're probably aware that the preservation of old games is one of those subjects that I'm randomly very passionate about, and how I view mandatory server-side content as one of the largest scams to ever hit the video game industry. However, don't worry, that's not what this video is about. Instead, this is about the preservation of old games and being able to get the most authentic playing experience through an emulator. And to that end, I think I may have found one of the very best adapters on the marketplace. But before that, let me make just a minor disclaimer about emulation. I know emulation can be a hot topic between people who think you should never emulate anything and people who think you should be able to download any game from, say, the NES or SNES or Genesis that isn't currently in production. From a strict legal standpoint, both these views are wrong. The Digital Millennium Copyright Act allows for the creation of and use of digital backups that you create. And current US copyright law protects the copyright for 75 years regardless of whether or not the product is still being actively sold. Meaning that even though Mario Bros. May have been released in 1983, Nintendo has that content protected until the year 2058. Honestly, copyright in America is just so stupidly broken. Now, anytime you see me doing retro gaming on this channel using an emulator, I want you to know that I own both the game being played as well as the system it's being played on. Because it's a legal thing to do and because I want to support resellers of these old games such as Vile Mike or Rock Solid Productions. Knowing that, it kind of begs the question, Matthew, if you own the game and the system, why bother with emulation at all? Thanks for asking, imaginary YouTuber. That is a great question. Emulation is extremely important for a host of reasons. For instance, one of the most important things it does is it encourages the archival of games that would have otherwise been lost. When Nintendo released Mario Bros. For the Wii Virtual Console, it was quickly discovered that they had used a ROM downloaded from a popular emulation website. Why did they do that? Well, maybe they were feeling lazy that day, but it's more likely it was because they no longer had a copy of the game themselves. Look, hard drives crash, data is deleted by accident, mistakes happen, and thankfully fans had saved that game for Nintendo to download and sell again for a profit. On a more personal level, I want to mitigate the wear and tear on parts that are difficult to replace, while at the same time benefiting from the superior graphics that emulators typically offer. Now, with the N64, for example, a common point of failure is located right here where the PCB enters the case. The flexing of the PCB as you slide it in and pull it out, over time breaks the tracings. You can fix them if you know how, and it's a very rewarding thing to do, but for many people, a break in the PCB trace resigns the game to the trash bin. When emulators first began, the limiting factor they faced were compatibility issues due to hardware performance, but in modern times, for me at least, the main issue with emulation is finding a controller that lets me feel like I'm playing the original system. I've used the PS3 controllers, the PS2, Xbox 360 controllers, not to mention a slew of computer-oriented joysticks and gamepads, but each one just didn't feel quite right. I can ignore it for the most part on a game system such as the NES or the Sega Genesis, where I only have to worry about a digital pad and a couple of buttons. But once I hit the N64, nothing feels right anymore. Xbox and PlayStation controllers all make use of a second analog stick, but the N64 is mainly focused on a combination of the analog stick as well as, say, the C buttons or the digital pad, and the sensitivity of the analog stick is always just a bit off when using, say, an Xbox 360 controller. That's where this adapter comes into play, and I could not be more excited to tell you about it. Pulling everything out of the case, one of the things that really pleasantly surprised me was the quality of the adapter itself. When I first started following this project about 6 years ago, the adapters had a much more DIY aesthetic, where the circuitry wasn't in the case but enclosed in heat shrink tubing, and I didn't notice what an incredible upgrade it's received since then. This plastic feels really quite good, and the device itself feels sturdy. I don't feel like I'm going to break it if I throw it into my backpack to carry it somewhere or throw it into a bin for storage at any point. And looking at this casing, I can see that this wasn't just some random case that he's adapted for his use, but that a lot of time and effort has been spent into creating this case, complete with a, I don't know, what would you call this? Is this an embossing or a imprinting of his logo straight on the case? I know this is a tiny thing to call out, But if I didn't know that this came from a guy who's been working on this and producing this on his own, I would have thought that this adapter came from a large manufacturing company, such as, say, Hyperkin. A second pleasant surprise to me, beyond the adapter, is the inclusion of the 1 meter long USB cable. I mean, honestly, the fact that it came with a USB cable at all was just shocking to me, since so many things don't come with the cables anymore. But the quality of this cable was also shocking to me. The fact that instead of this cable came with my $600 phone was nothing short of staggering. This is a meter long, thick, braided, sturdy USB cable that is going to allow you to connect the USB Type B mini adapter to your standard USB Type A USB port on your computer. Now, since I did purchase the 2-port adapter of this, and it also comes with the 1-port adapter, which is a little bit cheaper, this also comes with a nice labeled 2 on it, and I tried to move this really hard, and you're not going to be able to move it. He's attached this quite firmly. Now, on a future revision, I think it might be nice if instead of 2 black USB ports, or 2 black controller ports rather, with one of them notated with a number 2, I wouldn't mind seeing, say, a different colored port, such as the blue or red controller port to plug into to differentiate between which player is 1 and which player is 2. But for now, this is a clear and easy way to read the label, and it's more than sufficient. Okay, getting this stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and open this up and see what we're dealing with on the inside of this adapter. So it is held together with this single Phillips head screw and some sliding clips at the front. Now, I'm going to do my best to get this open without breaking it, because I'm notoriously bad about breaking these snap clips at the front. So I am going to get this open here, and let me try and keep it in frame. And I can see that it does have some strain relief, which is good because I do have some kids and they don't always pay the best attention to where they're going and what they're doing. So if they were to accidentally, say, trip over this, it's nice to know that instead of the wires being ripped right off the PCB, we do have some strain relief in here to prevent that. And hopefully I can get everything put back together so that I still have that strain relief now that I've taken it apart. As for the PCB itself, I'm really shocked. I hadn't realized that Raphnet-Tech had gotten this to this stage of the production. I thought we were still much more at the DIY level of things, and seeing that he's gotten along this far, I really would have thought that this was a product made by a big manufacturer like Mad Catz or Hyperkin or something like that. I would never have thought that this was something that has been a 6-year, at least, if not decade-long project done by one guy as he's built up these adapters from the ground up. And I'm just so thrilled to see how far he's gotten. Okay, so right now I have my N64 controller plugged into the adapter, plugged into my computer. I didn't require any additional drivers for Windows 10, everything was just plug and play and it ran. I do know that this also works for Linux as well as Mac OS X. However, I'm uncertain if you require any additional drivers or DLL files or anything like that. But for Windows 10, everything just hooked up and it worked great. Now, I've tested this on RetroArch as well as BizHawk, and here now on Project 64. And for all 3 of them, it was super easy. Just go into your controller settings and configure it. In fact, I'm going to show you how easy this is with Project 64. I'm just going to open my controller settings. You can see that right now I have nothing configured. So I'm just going to real quick digital pad up, left, right, whoop, right, down. And I'm going to do this as quick as I can.
Start A, B, left, right, and Z.
Okay, so I'm going to save that, open up Star Fox 64, and we should be good to go. I'm going to go to the training section because this is the easiest way just to get things going. And, you know, having done this for a little bit, this feels very authentic. Like, even just the stock, here you go, settings out of Project 64 and RetroArch and all of them, I would say that this is a very authentic. I wouldn't know that I wasn't using an N64 system right off the bat. Like, I wouldn't realize that this was all emulated. One of the fun things, though, is with many N64 controllers, they don't provide rumble support. In theory, this adapter will give you both rumble and memory card support. So what I'm going to do here real quick, I don't think it'll let me do it on the fly, but I'm going to try. If I come back into configure controller settings, on my controller pack, I'm going to tell it to send raw data of a rumble pack to my port 1 of this device. Don't worry about the port 3, but port 1 and 2 is what you would select. So we're going to save that. Oh, okay, so right like this, right out of the box, all I had to do was turn it on, and I am good to go for rumble support. I can feel every time I get hit, it rumbles with the engine. This is great. This has one of been my main complaints for the N64 controllers or emulators, is that anytime I do get an N64 controller, even if I get a USB N64 controller, it never includes a rumble pack feature, and I've never understood why. It's always just seemed like a bit of laziness. The fact that this lets me have the N64 rumble pack is fantastic. However, there is a reason why I picked Project 64. Raphnet-Tech has released a driver specifically for the Project 64 system that will bypass everything. It will be a direct interface, which will give you the best possible response time for a controller. So I'm going to swap this out right now. We will end that emulation because it needs to be offline. In the settings, I'm going to come to plugins, and instead of Enrage for PJ64, I'm going to come here to my Raphnet Raw for Project 64 version 1.06. It is just a direct interface to this. Everything is controlled in the backend. So I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to see if I can notice any difference between the PJ64, which the way it works is it goes through the USB bus and then to the adapter, and you do polling back and forth, and it creates just a little bit of latency. This is as close to a direct connection as you can get. As for response time, I'd be hard pressed to say that I'm seeing a huge advantage over doing it this way. On this, there is one thing that I've done testing with on where this really shines. So if I pull up my time trials, because the Mario Kart 64, it does use the memory pack, but only for time trials. So if I come in here, you can see that right now it says it cannot read the N64 controller pack data because I have the rumble pack plugged in. And going to data, we should be able to find nothing. So right now, just nothing. What I'm going to do is go and swap out my rumble pack, put in my memory pack, and let's see if I can do it on the fly like this, or if it needs a... And there it is. There is my ghost data with my best record that I did here real quick just for testing. So this is awesome. I don't have to do any special transferring of memory pack files from this to my computer, loaded up by Project 64. It just allows transparent communication to my memory card device. I know not many games use this, but for those few games that do use a memory pack, the fact that this allows direct communication to it is just phenomenal. I love this. Now, there is a problem. I've only been able to get this direct interface to work seamlessly like this with Project 64. I have used their Muppin64. He creates a plugin for Muppin64. I was able to get it work as long as I was only doing command-line interface programs, or command-line instructions rather, excuse me. I couldn't get it to work with any of the front ends from Muppin64. So Muppin64 fans, I'm sorry, but for whatever reason the plugin it doesn't register very well. Every time I try to use one of the Muppin64 plugins I had, or Muppin64 front ends that I had, it ended up crashing. So for now, if you want to be able to use this feature, Project 64 is the way to go. Just all in all, I can't say enough good things about this. Alright, that's it for this review. I hope you haven't minded my bit of a different format than I usually do for my videos. It's just this has been such an amazing adapter, I had to talk a little bit about it. But if you do like this sort of content and you want to know more about retro gaming, about accessories and systems, then I suggest you go check out Rock Solid Productions. He does videos like this all the time, and it is just great to see what's out there for these old gaming consoles. One of these, the 2-port one, it cost me about 25 bucks. The single port one was only $22, so I decided to spring just a little bit for this. Plus shipping, I think it was about $30. I can't say enough good things about it. He doesn't just do N64, he also does the NES USB, he does SNES, he does GameCube, and not just the USB, but he also allows you to use, say, an SNES on your N64 controller. And he also allows you to hook them up to your Wii controller. And that is the last thing I need to say about this, is that this all got started 6 years ago, maybe more for him, when he decided that he wanted to use the Wii port adapter and be able to plug all the consoles into it. because he realized they all talk the same protocol. And so he has just done an amazing job taking that basic idea and implement it across the board. But best of all, it's open source. So if you don't want to buy one of these for $30, he has all the instructions for how you can make your own adapter right on his website for free. Guys, I'm Life with Matthew. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you're enjoying this sort of content. And as always, leave comments down below on what you think you'd like to do with this. Is it fun? Do you think it's a waste of money? Do you have other alternatives that you enjoy? And until the next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.